Answering MCAT questions in under 60 seconds. A woman is heterozygous for a mutation in an X-linked gene that leads to a form of color blindness. In her retina, some areas perceive color normally, while other areas do not. Which of the following best explains why her phenotype is mosaic in nature? Okay, let's look at the answer choices. So A, the color blindness mutation on the X chromosome is silenced in some cells and not others. Okay, well this is a little bit of an ambiguous choice because it's sort of suggesting that specifically the mutation on that X chromosome is silenced. Okay, this is partly true, but it's not entirely true. So we're gonna do a little question mark there. Okay. Now B, the normal X chromosome in each cell is randomly lost during early development. So that isn't true, right? That is not the mechanism that we're looking for here. And in fact, you really couldn't have loss of X chromosomes early on, right? Because that would actually probably lead to non-functional cells, right? At least they're not lost in the form of like non-disjunction, okay? And then C, one of the X chromosomes in each cell is randomly inactivated during early development. So that's correct, right? Because you have to recognize that this process, and this is also what leads to moisticism, this phenotype being mosaic, right, is X inactivation. And remember that X inactivation is a solution, an evolutionary solution to the so-called dosage problem, right? Where basically, because in males you have only one X chromosome typically, and then in females it's usually two X chromosomes, right? You basically have the issue that males express on paper half as many proteins from X genes than do females. And so to solve that dosage problem, the dosage of proteins, right, that you're producing, you randomly in females inactivate all but one X chromosome, right, in each cell. And that happens randomly. And so in this particular scenario, this woman who has this genetic color blindness, right, her cells randomly inactivated one of those X chromosomes as they develop. And one of those in some cells, right, are going to be the mutation ones, the ones that are mutated, so that gene is inactivated, whereas the other cells are going to have only the normal one silenced, right? And so those cells will express the mutation. And so that is actually the reason for moisticism, okay, which is what that phenomenon is called when you have basically this kind of differential phenotypic expression, okay? And so that's because of X inactivation. And remember that the inactivated X chromosome is called the bar body, okay? Another caveat to this, right, is if you had like multiple X chromosomes, okay? Like for example, let's say you had 3 X chromosomes. Well, in that case, again, you would silence all but one of those X chromosomes. So these two would be inactivated, for instance, okay? You would only have one expressed. Now, in reality, some of those genes on that X chromosome that is silenced are expressed, right? So there isn't actually truly an equal amount of protein produced in males and females, but it's a lot less than there would otherwise be, okay? And then D, the cells with normal X chromosomes undergo apoptosis to prevent color blindness expression. Well, that's just ridiculous, right? So that's definitely wrong. So C here is the best answer. Now, A is a worse answer because they're basically suggesting with that wording that the X chromosome, right, or that specific mutation is silenced, right, in one cell but not others. But there's really no mechanism for that, right? The better explanation is that you have X inactivation going on.